Welcome back to the show. It's Aaron here. This is the AI Alpha Insider Show. We are glad to have you with us today. Are you ready for some exciting news? Social media, nothing new there, you say? How about using social media to grow yourself? This episode is so packed with mindset and pearls of wisdom coming from Dr. Back that I am biting my tongue to not spoil your excitement. Albert and Isabel will not forgive me if I do. So without further ado, please put your hands together for your hosts, Albert and Isabel.
Dr. Back McGuigan.
Yeah.
And apparently he's built this whole global brand for himself. So that's what we're going to unpack today, right? How he went from like teeth to like influencer.
It is fascinating. It's a really interesting case study, actually, because he didn't start with like a massive online following or anything like that.
Right.
He was very intentional about using the internet, but it was always as a way to kind of like attract patients to his practice.
Which makes sense. I mean, that's how people find everything now.
Exactly.
But like to go from that to a global brand, that's a whole other level.
Totally. And, he was already active online when the pandemic hit, but that's when things really took kind of a turn for him, because he had this realization, and he actually talks about it in his digital course, Alpha Class Digital Impact, where he says, I used to say, I treat people, not just teeth.
Okay.
But when COVID hit, I realized if you're not online, you don't exist.
Wow.
Like, that was a big deal.
That's a powerful statement. And it's so true, though. In today's world, if you're not online, do you even exist?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's when he really started to see the potential of digital platforms to reach this global audience.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. He didn't just jump on every trend or try to be everywhere at once, right? He had this concept he called filtered truth.
Filtered truth.
Which is all about being really intentional about understanding your audience and sharing what resonates with them, not just like,
just word vomiting all over the internet.
Exactly. It's not about just dumping information online. It's about being strategic.
Okay. So it's like authenticity, but with a filter.
Exactly. And he actually talks about how authenticity online is not what most people think.
Okay.
He's not saying you have to like bare your soul or reveal like every little detail about yourself.
Right.
It's more about being genuine while understanding that you're always presenting a curated version of yourself online.
Okay, so how do you decide what to share and what to keep private? Where do you even draw that line?
So he uses this thing. He calls it the 10 people theory.
Okay.
Imagine you have 10 people that are constantly watching you online.
Okay.
Okay. 2 of them, your biggest fans, love everything you do.
Love it.
3 are your critics just waiting to, find something. Yeah. And then there are the other 5.
Who are just like lurking.
They're the silent observers.
Okay.
Right. They're quietly forming their opinions in the background based on what they're seeing. And Dr. Back's point is that those 5 are the ones who really matter.
Interesting.
Because they're forming an impression of you based not just on what you post, but how you engage.
Okay.
Right. So are you responsive to comments, even the critical ones?
It's easy to respond to the positive ones, right?
Are you engaging in thoughtful discussions? Are you building a reputation? It's not just about racking up likes.
So we're really starting to see how Dr. Back uses this like filtered truth to build his online presence.
Right.
But what I find really interesting, and we haven't even gotten to this in the articles yet, is his approach to networking. Particularly with what he calls his like alpha network.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting because, most people, when they think about networking, they think about how can I get in front of this person? How can I get something from them?
Right, like a connection or.
Exactly. A lead, an introduction.
But he flips that and he doesn't approach these high achievers as a fan.
Okay.
Asking for favors.
Yeah.
He positions himself as someone who can help them amplify their message and achieve their goals.
So he becomes a facilitator for their success, not the other way around.
Precisely.
Interesting.
So, for example, he'll invite a CEO onto his podcast.
Okay.
Not to talk about dentistry,
right,
but to share their expertise on like leadership or business strategy.
I love that.
Right.
Or he might collaborate with them on a social media campaign that highlights like their latest project or book.
Because he's not coming at it from a place of like, what can you do for me? They're much more open to like sharing their knowledge and like, collaborating.
Exactly. Because it's a genuine relationship based on mutual respect and a shared desire to kind of make an impact,
Yeah, totally.
And it creates this really cool virtuous cycle where the more value he provides to his network, the more influential his network becomes.
Right, and the more doors open, the more it's like this upward spiral.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually put that into practice?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get the attention of some of these, like, high-level people?
Well, it starts with identifying the right people to connect with. And I don't just mean people with impressive titles,
Right.
It's about finding individuals who, A, align with your values, and B, whose work you genuinely admire.
So it's like quality over quantity in terms of like who you're reaching out to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's about crafting a compelling pitch that focuses on what you can offer them.
Okay.
Right. So he might say something like, I love your work on sustainable business practices, and I believe my audience would find your insights incredibly valuable. I'd be honored to feature you on my podcast.
So you come at it from a place of like, I see what you're doing, I respect what you're doing, and I think it would be amazing to share it with my audience.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just about like making that initial connection.
Right.
It's about nurturing that relationship over time.
Okay.
Staying top of mind, continuing to add value, because relationships are a two-way street.
They are. It's amazing to me that he's been able to do this, though, to build this network that really does span like so many different industries and like literally continents.
It's incredible. And, that network has not only amplified his own platform, but it's also allowed him to make a much bigger impact because he's giving a voice to others.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Okay, so we've talked about filtered truth. We've talked about the alpha network.
Right.
But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about like the elephant in the room, which is like content.
Right.
Because you can have the best networking strategy in the world.
Exactly. Content is king or queen or both.
Right, exactly. Like you could have the best contact list in the world, but if you're not creating high quality content that resonates with people, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and that's something Dr. Back understands. Like he's written books, he's produced documentaries.
Right.
He's constantly creating engaging social media posts, but he's also very open about the fact that it's not always easy.
It's a lot, especially if you're like, I mean, he's got a whole career.
Of course, yeah.
A personal life. Like, how does he do it all?
Yeah, he talks about being incredibly disciplined with his time. He's built a team to support him.
Okay.
But he's also very realistic about his limitations, He focuses on his strengths and then delegates tasks that are outside of his wheelhouse.
That's something I think we can all take from this. Yeah, like you don't have to be good at everything.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't have to do everything.
And he's very strategic about the types of content he creates as well.
Yeah.
So he uses like short form videos on platforms like TikTok and Instagram to give like quick tips or behind the scenes glimpses into his life. And then he uses longer form content like his books and podcasts to delve into more complex topics and establish his authority.
So it's about like finding that balance and using each platform for its strengths.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, he obviously didn't just like pop out of the womb making TikToks and writing books. Like, did this come naturally to him, or is this something he's had to kind of cultivate over time?
He's very open about the fact that like creating these engaging short form videos, for example, is a skill he had to learn and refine over time.
See, and that's encouraging to hear because I feel like so many people, myself included, sometimes get overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, there's so many platforms, so many ways to create content.
Right.
And it's like, where do you even begin?
Sure.
But it's reassuring to know that even someone as like, successful as Dr. Back started somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the things I admire most about him is he's constantly evolving and adapting to the ever-changing digital landscape. Yeah. He's not afraid to experiment with new platforms or try new things,
So it's not just about like jumping on every trend. It's about like...
It's about being open to learning and growing alongside your audience.
Alongside your audience, yeah.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to the bigger question of like, what happens to all this in the long run, right?
Right, yeah.
What is the legacy?
Yep.
And that's what we're going to talk about when we return is this idea of building a digital legacy that extends beyond likes and followers.
Love it. Okay, we'll be right back.
This is really exciting. It is mind-blowing. Everyone can be someone nowadays. And with Dr. Bach's mentoring, we can all take this to the next level. I went to one of his private seminars. What I heard touched my heart. He said that everyone has a story worth telling. Whoever you are, you have a story that will help someone else. I followed him ever since. This is next level. He is now empowering all of us to find our audience and online presence. I told you that this would be fun. Albert, Isabel, back to you.
Okay, so we're back. And I have to say, like, going through all of this stuff about Dr. Back has me really thinking about the bigger picture here, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about building an audience today. It's about, like, what legacy are we creating online?
And that is something that Dr. Beck really emphasizes. Is like, how do you build a digital legacy that goes beyond just these vanity metrics?
Right. It makes you kind of think about, like, what do you want to be known for, right?
It's interesting you say that because for him, legacy is not this abstract concept.
Yeah.
It's about the impact you have on others, and particularly in his role as a mentor. And he actually talks about this in his book, Beyond Influence, crafting a legacy that matters.
Oh, I love that. And we see this, right? Like with his son, William, and his apprentice, Melissa, who've both found success using his principles.
Exactly. It's like he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. And he empowers others to do the same. And it's a real testament to the fact that his methods, they work, you know?
Right. And they can be replicated.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's one thing to, like, find success yourself, but to then equip other people to do the same. That's
legacy, right?
It's a legacy, yeah.
It's like this ripple effect. When you empower others, they go on to empower others, and then it just kind of multiplies exponentially.
And then it's like your influence is going out into the world, even in ways you don't even see.
Exactly. And it really emphasizes the fact that building a digital legacy is not about self-promotion.
Right.
It's about contributing to something larger than yourself.
So how do we start to cultivate that? Like, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, this is resonating with me, but where do I even begin?
Well, it starts with defining your values.
Okay.
Like, what do you stand for? What message do you want to put out in the world?
Yeah.
And once you have clarity on those values, then you can start to make decisions about the content you create, the people you collaborate with, the platforms you engage on. It all stems from that, you know?
So it's like being really intentional about your online presence.
100%, yeah.
Just like, you know, Dr. Back is talking about with his filtered truth and all that. It's like, we actually get to choose. We have that power. Yeah.
To like curate what we're amplifying, what impact we want to have.
And it's an ongoing process, right? It's not just a one-time decision.
Right.
The digital landscape's constantly evolving, so we need to be adaptable and willing to, you know, learn and adjust along the way.
That's both exciting and slightly terrifying, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because it's like we really do have this incredible power to shape our online presence, right?
You do.
And how many people throughout history have really had that opportunity?
And, you know, Dr. Back actually says this, that, like, having a digital presence will soon be as essential as breathing.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
It is, but when you think about how interconnected our world is becoming...
It's true.
It's true, right? And it kind of begs the question, what will your digital footprint say about you? What are you putting out there? What legacy are you building right now with your actions online? Wow, that's a great place to leave it. This has been so fascinating. I love these deep dives when we find somebody who's just, like, killed it in a certain area. And you're right, like, he's a dentist. He wasn't, you know, famous for being, you know, on a reality TV show or something. He
leveraged the tools we all have access to, you know?
He did, in a really smart and effective way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for bringing all this to the table.
Oh, it was my pleasure. This is great.
Really, really fascinating stuff. And for everybody listening, remember, like, take some of these principles, put them into practice, because the digital world really is your oyster, right?
It is 100%.
So go out there, make your mark. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.
Haven't I told you so? Wasn't that a great insight? I have good news. Dr. Box is launching his online seminars and mentoring classes soon. If you feel that you are ready to have your voice out there, stay tuned. The waiting list will be open soon. Now, if you are like me and can't wait, I have a great news for y'all. You can have access to Dr. Box's digital impact class in book format right now. It is available in 51 countries through Apple Books. Amazon Kindle and paperback format will be released later this year. So what are you waiting for? Sign up on one of Dr. Box's class or book and find your voice. We all have a story worth telling. This is our time. I am Aaron. Welcome to the Alphas. Oh, I almost forgot. Next Thursdays, we will be diving into emotional intelligence. This will be epic. Have a wonderful week and see you Thursday with Albert and Isabel. This is the Alpha Insider Show. I am Aaron. Welcome to the Alphas.